Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Unscripted Coding. Today, we're going to look at how we can deploy Visual Studio Code on the internet, on the web, on the cloud. Now, Visual Studio Code is, in short, a really good, lightweight system to edit code. There's probably a really good description somewhere on their site, but if you haven't seen it, I use Video Studio Code a ton. I am working on my own current project here. You'll see that I even take some notes on Visual Studio Code. It is just so lightweight. It taps into so many different things, whether it's different languages, different tools, GitHub. There are plugins for Grammarly if you want to spell check. So there is just a ton of reasons why Visual Studio Code is good. Tie that all up with the fact that it's lightweight. You have something that works amazingly well. Now, Visual Studio Code is an application. You can run it on Windows. I think there's something for Linux, Mac OS. But the interesting thing is since I started working on it, let's say I'm writing something here, I have all of these customizations for myself, all these extensions downloaded. I like how it runs. One of the obvious questions is, how can I take this to another computer? I can install it again, but I have to fiddle with all the settings. And what if I want to take it away from Mac OS, Windows, or Linux? So something a lot of people do, not me so much, is what if I want to use it on an iPad? So naturally, there are solutions coming up in which you can run Visual Studio Code on the web, on the cloud. And one really big one is GitHub code spaces. I haven't tested this one yet because it is still in beta and they haven't given me early access yet. This is probably as close to the full experience as you're going to get. Visual Studio Code is from Microsoft. Microsoft recently bought GitHub, and Code Spaces is actually coming from their Microsoft's Visual Studio Code online project, pilot, whatever you want to call it. So you can just go on a web browser and start using it. But the two obvious problems are, well, the first obvious problem is it's not available yet. I have no clue when it'll come out. I have been waiting for ages. I wanted to maybe throw this into VR, see if I can use a VR web browser to access it. None of that has come through yet, so I don't know how long it'll take. The other thing is GitHub is charging for this, not currently, but the plan is, I think, 8 or 9 cents an hour. They charge separately for storage. They charge separately for higher tiers. So if you start using a lot of editors, if you start running things, you may want a higher tier. That could be 16 cents, that could be 20 cents, and it just starts adding up. The alternative I scoped out is Coder, and this is what we're going to try and do today. Coder, or rather Code Server. Coder is very similar in idea. They let you run a whole bunch of things on the web, including Visual Studio Code. Very similar. It costs money. It's probably really well done, but I just want to test out the idea. I am not entirely sold that putting my VS Code on the cloud, accessible through the web, is the best idea. So I just want to play around with it a little bit. So, okay. That's a long way of going through code spaces, Coder, and then finally Code Server. Code Server is an open source project. It's by the people from Coder and basically allows you to take your computer, deploy VS Code on the web, and you can access it online. Similar idea across the board. It's all the same thing. But it doesn't cost anything. I can run it on my computer, check out how it runs in other browsers. Now, for me, I am not so worried. If GitHub was charging me 8 cents an hour, I would just run it maybe for a couple of days, because the 8 cents is not going to break the bank, even if it adds up 20, 30, 40 times. So what I want to do with Code Server is I want to run it, but I know that you can deploy it on a cloud provider. And so this isn't going to be entirely free. This is going to cost money. You can actually probably use like free containers like Azure App Service here. I am going to use Azure App Service. And we're just going to try and deploy it and see how it works very, very quickly. So that's enough talking. That's enough of an introduction. And I am going to start from scratch here. All right, so we have successfully deployed Coder on Azure. And I have to say, it was shockingly easy to do so. You need an Azure account, obviously. There is the free tier, which is the F1 tier, free 1 CPU, 1 gig of RAM. That's all you need. And it's just 3 steps. You tell them you want this Code Server Azure Docker. It deploys. This isn't even really a step. It's saying wait 2 minutes for it to deploy. And then finally you hit browse, which is to go to the actual link of the site here. And then you sign on to your GitHub account. So it is paired with GitHub, and the whole idea is you should be using source control. Obviously, you are not on your computer anymore, so you can't save files locally. The idea is everything is in a repository. It's in GitHub. You can work with that, push it to GitHub, bring it back, and so on. Now, there's a bunch of things I learned here while I was doing it. Number one is all of these different variations. There are 2 different types. There's the VM and the container. It seems containers aren't going to last forever. They're kind of... See, I'm questioning myself now because I feel like this acts like a serverless type of thing based on their description, but containers don't necessarily mean that. What I read this as is you deploy it, when you stop using it, it closes down, it deletes everything, and then when you open it again, it starts from scratch all over again. It builds it, it runs it, all of that. It doesn't take very long, but what it's doing is it's destroying it and recreating it from scratch. So if you have a whole bunch of settings, it's not going to last forever. So especially if you're adding a bunch of extensions and so on. So they're saying, you need to put it into the Docker file. You want to make those changes so that it persists all the time. On the other hand, virtual machines, you have that machine for the entirety of the month or whatever. And so it just stays on. It's just always accessible. You are just tapping into a cloud instance on through the web, and it's yours. It's always there. It doesn't get destroyed, so it keeps everything forever while it's running. That's interesting thing number one. So I chose Azure because I always use Azure. It's nice and easy for my billing. But there are obvious benefits and costs to it. I actually like it this way. I probably would pick container anyways because your build, you're paying while it's on. So if it destroys and you don't use it for a very long time, then you're not getting billed for it. But you have free options elsewhere. So the cool thing is there's a bunch of things here. I haven't gotten into it, but you can immediately get a repo every time. So I imagine I will be tapping into one of my GitHub repos so that every time it automatically loads that one up. You can have passwords. That's always good. You can have a custom length. So if I wanted to, I can change the name of it. Okay, so that is lesson number one, is there are differences between where you deploy it. And of course, if you deploy it on an actual computer, it'll just run it off that computer. It'll act like a virtual machine. Number two is Coder is not actually VS Code. Microsoft has Microsoft Visual Studio Code. A lot of it is open source. That's why this version of it looks so similar. A lot of it is open source, and it runs like I wouldn't know the difference. You tell me this is Microsoft Visual Studio Code. Sure, I think this is more of a design choice that the bar is on the side rather than across the top, like a Windows device. But there are slight differences. So some extensions aren't available. Okay, so that's where some of the differences are. But actually playing around with it, you notice immediate limitations. So I don't have Python installed, and I'm puzzling over, can I stick that into the container? Certainly, I can stick it into the Docker container, putting it into the Docker file, have it install Python in the Linux. So you're going to need to do a bit of work to make it run something like Python code. The second one is that things are slightly different. So as I said, you're not running this on your home computer. You can't save things. So naturally, you're going to use things like GitHub or a repository pretty heavily. Those are disadvantages. Now, I'm looking at this going, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do a major project on this. It's difficult. There's too many questions to be had. But one of the things I said I've been doing is I've been doing my notes. So class notes, looking through books and typing up notes, all in Markdown, saving it on my repository. And it is phenomenal to be able to track all the changes, to keep it all on GitHub, make it available to everyone, convert it left and right. It is a fantastic tool. It's not perfect. If you're doing a ton of diagrams, this makes no sense whatsoever, but I deal in a lot of text. So this is going to be fantastic because I can pull this URL, and believe me, it's going to change. I can pull this URL anywhere from my workplace, from the university, to my home computer, to anywhere. Do it on my phone, wherever, and have access to it. So this is pretty cool. And I think that seems like a very compelling reason for me to use this. The other thing I wanted to do really quickly is show you guys that this runs on an iPad. You don't have to believe me for it because I have it here mirrored. This is the Edge browser. I'm sure it works on Safari. They're all the same anyways. But you can see I can do different things. I can start typing. Let's close this up. And I am very curious, but if I start typing, will it update here? And obviously, if you're doing this on iPad, you probably don't want the giant keyboard. You'd hook it up to some sort of Bluetooth external keyboard or something. But I just wanted to show you guys that, yeah, you can definitely work at it. And it looks exactly the same, and therefore you have kind of like a hacky, yes, you have Visual Studio Code on iPad, and you can do a bit of work on it as well. So if you didn't need to run the Python code, you can definitely just type it off, have all of that IntelliSense, have all of those helpful tools. You may even very well run it in the future. Now, what is disappointing to me is I've obviously typed a few things up in the file here. I've typed a few things, and it's not showing up. So I wonder if I refresh, if I'll see. Yeah, so I see it. I was hoping that there would be some sort of real-time interaction. So if I type here, would I see it on the iPad? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't get that up. But a very quick refresh will do it. Anyways, I think that is an incredibly helpful, incredibly useful tool to have. And if you deploy it in any of these, it seems like the guides are super simple. They do all of the heavy lifting for you. You can see realistically, if I knew what I was doing, I can get this running in 2 or 3 minutes. Just pick one of the servers you don't use. I don't use Railway. I rarely use Heroku. These are free anyways. Just spin one up, keep it running in the background, and you can do some work on the go. I hope that was a really helpful suggestion, helpful tip, because I think this is, I think there are very specific but very good use cases for it. I will be hoping that Codespaces comes around, but I think this is working better than I thought it would. So I'll do an update video probably a little later in the future, but if you thought this was helpful, if you found it interesting, please do comment, please do subscribe, and I'm excited to do more videos about coding in general. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe.